in the salvo about his executive order protecting women's sports. Well, of course, some Democrat loons, captive to transmania, pledge not to comply, like Maine's Janet Mills.
You understand Maine? Is Maine here, the governor of Maine?
Huh? Not here.
Are you not going to comply with it?
I'm complying with state and federal laws.
We are the federal law. Well, you better do it. You better do it because you're not going to get any federal funding at all if you don't. And by the way, your population, even though it's somewhat liberal, although I did very well there, your population doesn't want men playing in women's sports. So you better comply because otherwise you're not getting any federal funding.
See you in court.
Every state, good. I'll see you in court. I look forward to that. That should be a real easy one. And enjoy your life after governor because I don't think you'll be in elected politics.
There we go. Sorry about that. Hey. Good afternoon, good evening, whatever it is for you guys. Hold on just a second. This feels really weird. Okay. Just my hair's still wet. I just brushed it. So, yeah, kind of felt a little strange with it. Not quite as loose as it usually is. So, okay. Feel much better now. Thank you. How you guys doing today? I used that clip yesterday when I tried to, if you guys didn't notice, I tried to do a stream yesterday, and I decided instead to cut out while I was still ahead because I was feeling that sleepy feeling, and it was just like, and as I put in the description for today, I'm really gonna try to keep my focus now as far as progressing the show at all to just the fact that I think one of the only things that's really dragging me down at this point, making it damn near impossible to do the show every day as I'm trying to do, is the ridiculous sleep schedule that I just can't. I mean, I don't know if anybody can relate. I used to have insomnia, but this isn't the same thing. This is very different. It's just from years of different jobs with different schedules and needing to be up at a different time and kind of getting used to a less strict schedule, to say the least. There's just so many times, and this is where I was basically leading. I don't know if you have had this experience before, but if you have, it's tough where you're not tired, you don't want to go to sleep. There's a bunch of things on your mind that you like to do or you like to get done or, whatever it might be. And so it's just impossible to even try to force yourself to go to sleep. You just end up just saying, no, I can't go to sleep right now. I can't do it. I need to do something else. And it makes it really difficult because then when you do really need to sleep, it's like, oh God, I got to do something soon. And then it's even harder because if there's anything harder for me than going to sleep when I don't feel like sleeping, it's staying awake when when I really can't afford to stay awake any longer because and even worse than that is trying to get up after a very short amount of sleep when you really need more than that and dealing with it like that because you might stay awake, especially if it's something like going somewhere. Like I remember the last time I can really remember this for sure that this sucked. It was an early in the day appointment to get blood drawn, and it was like I woke up about 45 minutes before I needed to leave, and that was just man, that sucked because like I'm a very slow start morning kind of person. It takes a while for me to get all the spider webs wiped off and just to get myself actually going in the morning and or no matter when it is, just get myself going, period. And first thing I had to do was go to the blood draw. Now luckily I had a ride, but God, it was impossible to freaking get I had to go as slow as possible. I was dragging my feet the whole time, and I made it, and I got it done, and everything was fine. But it was the hardest thing in the world. But then it's weird because then going back after doing something like that, good luck trying to go back to sleep. Because after that, it's like, nope, you're not going to sleep now. Nope, nope, nope. Sometimes it's impossible for me to stay awake though, because yes, I'm. This is why it's hard for me to get into a normal sleep schedule because of all the weird sort of. I don't know. It's probably a byproduct of the other like anxiety issues, the panic issues, the especially the anxiety issues. I have a mild, not mild, a sort of not intense level, but like or severe level, but something more akin than more intense than average, much more intense than average for people. But if you are diagnosed with anxiety disorder, actually have higher levels of anxiety than normal, I would be like not in the lower end, not in the higher end, but somewhere in the middle. Which panic disorder, that's a different situation because I do have panic disorder. It's far more severe, but as far as the anxiety issues go, it can get out of hand pretty bad. But it's usually more based on panic attacks or extreme panic disorder issues where I have a weird thing about me. I've never said this before. I've never talked about this on stream before. But what the hell? I'll bring it up right now. Damn, excuse me. I have a very difficult time going into department stores, in particular things like Target, Walmart, places that are big, open department stores. Like I have a very, very difficult time in just going through them, and I can't really explain why. There's not really a really good reason why I can explain how it comes about. It's just the best I can explain it, and I've tried to explain it like this to doctors or whoever who've asked. The best I can explain it is that looking out into a sea of just things for sale and things that are just rows and rows and rows of aisles and things and price tags and promotions, and it's just overwhelming. It's every time it's just completely overwhelming. It's hard. I start feeling dizzy. I start feeling nauseous. I start getting panicked. I start having blurry vision, and I always have to go outside for a smoke because I have to go outside. And it's been worse. It's been not quite as worse lately, but I think it's because I've kind of kept my head down, walked as fast as I could to the place I need to be, and if it's in a part of the store where kind of segregated off, where there's walls, like sporting goods is a good example, where there's just a more confined space where the sporting goods stuff is. And if I stick over in an area like that, then it forces me to kind of only pay attention to that direct area and not the whole store. So it's not quite as bad when you get to something like that. But out in the middle of the store, no. That's why, like clothing and stuff like that, out in the middle, no, I can't stay there very long at all because it's just too much. So anyway, but that's just an example because it's really weird, and it's something I've never had a direct answer for. But I do know that I've had someone in the family who, my great grandmother, as a matter of fact, who had almost exactly the same issue I did, which is why I've heard stories about when she was getting older, she had to have my grandma or my mom basically do her shopping for her for almost everything that she needed. And so I remember when before she passed, and while they were still shopping for her, she would always sit in the car and always let them do the shopping inside, and then it would be in the middle of summer, a super hot day, and it wouldn't matter. She would rather, which another thing that was weird about her too, and I always remember this because when you got in the car, if the air conditioner was on, but it was off on the passenger side and it was pointed away, like that was the other thing. She couldn't have air conditioner blowing towards her, or she couldn't even have moving air pointed towards her. Really, it was just, it never it was never a case where she left the car and had that set up. And whenever I'd get in the car and she had used it last and she had done that, it was always, off and in the position of pointed as far away as she could get it. So it was strange, like how that was another aspect of it. But once again, so most of the mental illness that I know of from my direct family is a lot more like the diagnosis, at least, is a lot more straightforward. Like there's a diagnosis that they can point to and that they can kind of say, yeah, this fits the definition that we were looking for that. But I'm this way, and then I think my great grandma probably was this way as well, because a lot of the symptoms are very strange by the standards of what you expect to hear from someone with those types of issues. But I think we're the only ones that, because I've even had a doctor that said he didn't want to misdiagnose me, so he wasn't 100% sure about whether or not he wanted to diagnose me with anxiety, with panic, with something else entirely. He was thinking about something related to ADHD. There was something related to, believe it or not, PTSD, even though I've never been to a war situation. I have had some really bad, I won't get into it now, but I've had some really bad experiences that still are pretty difficult to think about even at this point. So it's there's been a number of diagnoses that have been kind of tossed around, and no one has been able to. The only two, like I said, are anxiety and panic that were really, really kind of firmly diagnosed. But everything else that might be an issue has not ever been formally reviewed or diagnosed or given a specific treatment or anything like that. So I've been kind of just relegated to essentially just do what you would do if you have just the ones that we know of for sure. But I've never heard back an answer about any kind of definitive condition besides that. So I don't know. It's weird. But anyway, that's enough about the depressing stuff. Let's move on to more news. Because man, last week I had so much to talk about, and I've wanted to get to it so bad, but one day I couldn't do it because. So what happened on Thursday? I remember I did. Thursday, or did I? Yeah, I did something Thursday, right? I know Friday I had to do something late, so or kind of earlier, but I was late to do the show, so I couldn't quite get to everything. I only had about an hour and 10 minutes or so to do the show, so I could only get to one subject, which really sucked. But I don't remember what happened the day before that. I know there was still several things I wanted to talk about, but I couldn't get to. I think there was one really long subject I was sticking with, and then there was something else I think I talked about after that. But anyway, I haven't got around to a lot of the stuff, and luckily it's not like it's a intensely high news schedule right now. There hasn't been anything as far as I know, other than one thing we're going to definitely talk about today. But and it was technically yesterday, which I was a little disappointed because I was really excited after I first heard about it, because I figured, hang on just a second. Okay. There we go. Okay. I never really thought about, sorry, I've been, the levels are good. They don't always quite hit the highest points that I need them to hit, so it's been kind of strange, but I think I got it now. Anyway, there's two subjects. One of them is related to Doge and a lot of the stuff that's been uncovered there, and then there's a much more serious subject we're going to get into today, which I've never formally talked about on the show yet. I haven't wanted to go into it because, quite frankly, I know it's a divisive issue. I know there's a lot of There's a lot of people very passionate on both sides, and I get that, but I'm gonna just say to hell with it. I'm gonna give it my personal opinion on today, and just whatever. I have to be honest on this show. I'm going to be honest on this show, and I'm not going to falter on that. So, and I've tried to look at it from as many angles as I can from several different people, and I can't help but always end up in the same position. And it's kind of strange for me, but it's just the way it ends up going. So we'll talk about that soon. But and then I also have the more lighthearted thing to talk about today, which I'll get into after I at least go over the first story, because Doge is the first one I was planning on talking about today, because it's wild as hell to see what's going on there, and see what kinds of things the money that we have our government spending our tax money on, which, by the way, if you're unfamiliar with the American system of government and taxes, depending on how much you earn, you obviously pay a different tax amount based on different in percentage. Sometimes there's something called, as far as I know, the wealth tax. It's been kicked around. I think it's in effect in some cases, but I think that's I honestly think that's stupid. And the only reason this is really a big issue right now is because tax reform got passed in Trump's first term, and it lowered taxes across the board for everybody. And the economy started doing very well under the lower taxes, because here's a little secret about taxes. One thing that I can't stand, especially from leftists who really, really, really just get triggered as hell when you start talking about tax cuts, is they immediately jump to the idea that, oh, you just want wealthy people to make more. When we say across the board, that means no, taxes go down for everyone. Literally every single person, everyone that is working a job that is paying money out of their check for their federal income, they will be taxed less. Yes, that's what. Now, you can't have the federal government deciding state taxes, especially in a state like California. It's unfortunate because the state might as well be. Somebody should try to step in, because if you want to talk about mismanaged taxes, oh god, I don't know if Doge could even handle California's issues, because they're so obviously wrought with corruption. But when it comes to the federal government itself, they pass tax policy every, I can't remember what the time frame is, but Trump's tax reform legislation, and when I say Trump's, it was during Trump's term, but technically it's the Congress that has the power of the purse, that has to make the decisions about finances and taxing and spending and yada yada yada. So basically what happened was, because of the tax cuts that went across the board, more people were more excited about entering the workforce. More people were interested in starting up businesses and testing out ideas with that lower threshold to entry, because bank loans will be easier to get, and ultimately home ownership loans are going to be easier to get a hold of. When you have when you have a income record that you can show that is just accounting for more money that would have been there in the first place if it weren't for such a high tax rate, it would be like, what's the word? But it'd be like condoning somebody robbing you, I think, is the best way to put it. That's kind of the best way I could put it, that actually makes sense in enough way to be able to correlate. Because the thing about it is, when you look at, I've seen charts about this, and what's really interesting is that for like the last over a century, we've been tracking the tax rate, tax percentage, which, by the way, when people refer to tax returns, not tax returns, tax. Well, when people talk about tax received by the federal government, that's technically the technical term is tax receipts. I learned that from David Schweikert, by the way. This guy's a brilliant mathematician and House representative from Arizona. And he's been trying to blow the whistle for Biden's entire presidency. I've seen a couple of instances of him on the floor during the first month of Trump's administration. But I would imagine if he... Oh, but did he win? He might not have even stayed in. I remember seeing he might have lost. And if he lost, that's a travesty because him and Chip Roy are probably two of the only people, and Scott Perry, the only people that ever went down to the House floor after they concluded regular session and gave floor speeches to the American people about what was going on in Congress and what was going on there that was really particularly harmful to people in the country, and specifically when it was around finances or around the price of the essentials, like price of food, price of types of snacks, types of whatever it is, but anyway, they were really seriously trying to wake people up to the fact that, okay, this idea of taxing more money and the idea of taxing the rich, that's not going to... Yo, what's up, Eddie Madison? How's it going, man? Good to see you again. I'm back here for a good episode today, so don't worry. I won't be disappearing within 10 minutes this time. And not to get into too boring of a discussion about taxes, but just so you guys know, because this is actually something that really surprised me when I heard about this. So let's say the tax rate is let's say the tax rate's at 12%, and we track the GDP for all the years that we have our tax rate at 12%. Okay. Then let's say the tax rate changes and it jumps way up. It jumps up to like 25%. Almost double, or more than double, actually, what it was. It turns out that the GDP actually really doesn't move much, if at all, when you increase income tax. Why? Well, there's a very interesting reason why. Good, man. Good. Glad to hear it. Me neither, actually, today. I got, real quick before I go back to this, I've got, what's coming? Well, I got a new mouse coming, but that's not the exciting part. I got an awesome model kit coming. I've been thinking about this for a while, and I may do a stream of doing a airbrush session of Gunpla or something else. This is actually an Armored Core model kit, which I'm very proud of, but I won't say anything else other than that. But anyway, yeah, that's the thing about taxes and GDP, is that surprisingly, when you tax people more, it's not a real stimulant to the GDP of the country and taking in more money. And why is that? Well, because what happens is businesses need to make money, first of all. And then if you're depending on the business, they might need supplies to run their business, especially if you're in the service industry where you are, doing food or something like that. Like you have to buy a lot of supplies, and you have to buy them on a very regular basis, sometimes every day. And it's just completely unbelievable that that people would kind of come to the conclusion where, it's those damn taxes, because what happens is that business owners have to make decisions one way or another. They can't pay their employees less, and they can't force the places where they buy their supplies from. They can't change the prices there. Which, if the taxes are going up, then that means that the people who sell the products are going to have to lower their or they're going to have to mark up their prices as well to make up for the lost revenue, because once again they have to pay their employees, and a lot of times what ends up happening is companies downsize, and if it's hit really hard they have to downsize to like a bare bones skeleton crew that would be not at all efficient in any way, especially with subjects so kind of open and deep, and like just like the things that you have to include are crazy. Now then there's a lot of people that take a lot of their savings and move it out of state, or even worse, and this is where things get really bad, when companies are like, to hell with this, I'm going to move my entire manufacturing base out of the country because I can't afford this tax rate. I just can't afford it, and to be able to stay stable in the business that I run. So yeah, it's mind-boggling that that there's people that really don't know these things, and these are things that you should know if you're in Congress and you have the power of the you have the power of the purse, you have the power to control the taxes and where they go. And if you aren't someone who knows this about tax policy, then you're not helping anything. But the consistent, ongoing chant from leftists is tax the rich, tax the rich. Well, in actuality, the rich actually already pay something like I think it was the top was it? Well, it might be the top 1%, as a matter of fact. It's the top 1% of earners. And bear in mind, I'm saying this not as a negative or a positive. I'm just saying that this is the truth. And to be honest, this is fine. If you make this amount of money, then it would be expected that you would be putting in this much money because of how much is possible for you to make in this country if you are someone that establishes some kind of high level of success. Your tax rate is going to be extremely high. But most people don't mind it if it's just high, if it's not like obviously an attempt to not only pass the buck of trying to balance the budget out to private businesses and their employees and their entire economic structure, but it's also worse because it allows them to find a scapegoat for political backlash that might be going to a business that is not like because here's the thing about businesses, like there's a way that somebody mentioned this and I thought it was really really insightful, I guess, or I can't really think of the word, but yeah, there's no correlation there with the amount of tax that comes in, and the reason is because in a case of like certain things that are really important, there's geez, okay, hold on, I was about to lose my train of thought. Yeah. So there's this kind of idea that okay, they're making so much money they can afford to pay a little bit more. Well, they're already paying, and the top marginal tax rate for federal tax for someone in the highest tax bracket is something like, I think 37%. That's almost 40% of someone's entire, annual savings. Which I guess the idea is you want to be in touch with the CEO and the owner himself, but no. But Trump recognized that because he's a businessman, because he's run businesses before, and he knows the pressures that are on businesses to stay afloat and to keep doing well. But when the government is looking at a bad situation with something like inflation, like we've got right now, the obvious and easy solution that people with small attention spans and not too big of a not too big brained of an individual, in that case, what you're unfortunately going to be dealing with is the idea that the market is going to make up for those little screw ups, and they're going to make it so that your actual amount that you make, and then after reduced from your income tax and your federal and state income tax, you'll be used to that being the norm, and you don't really think about the fact that, wow, if I wasn't taxed this much, though, I'd have this amount of money or that amount of money. And people who are able to think long term look at that and go, wow, this is a travesty how we've ended up having our tax system run, and yada yada. So I'm not sure if they know that it's not going to work, but so I jeez, man. But yeah, the problem is that they can't think of any other solutions. Now, here's where things get interesting, and this is where I have to point this out, because I've been seeing a lot of people freak out and a lot of people getting worried, and even members of my own family, unfortunately, are falling victim to the propaganda, and it's kind of got me personally invested and personally kind of, to be honest, pissed off because of the propaganda that is really running wild with the quote-unquote news media these days about the Republican platform for taxing, the Republican platform for policies surrounding things like what's it called? I'm not sure. Anyway, but their mindset only goes to one possible way, and it's never looking at it. So when you have a situation like we have today, where people on the left, or people who catch arguments from the left in whatever about Republicans coming for your Social Security, Republicans coming for your 401k, they're coming for your everything that you've got. Here's the problem: no one's ever said that, except for, there's been discussions where people have said everything needs to be on the table, even Social Security and Medicare. You know what the first president I think that said that? It was Joe Biden before he was president and he was in the Senate. In fact, I believe it was something like in the early 90s or something, maybe even. But it wasn't like in the last few years in the Senate. He was literally somebody who, even during the Obama administration. Now, during that administration, he fit right at home because Obama was the kind of politician that not only is charismatic enough to lead everybody, but he's also somebody that was very, very no matter what his line was, he was very, very outspoken about the need for some type of new tax code and something that was fair across the board. But they didn't really propose at that time to investigate everything. Like I said, that was on Joe Biden specifically in Congress. But when Paul Ryan, the last Speaker of the House under a Republican majority, this was before Kevin McCarthy, and unfortunately before Slipknot. But okay, well there we go. They were very much against the idea of taking anything away from people, but there was something that they were just like adamant, like we need to look at the whole budget. And so Paul Ryan brings this up. Now, Paul Ryan being a member as a speaker for the Republican Party and also a old school tradcon for the most part, like he was, or at least he portrayed like the qualities and the values of a traditional conservative, as opposed to a more populist modern day freaking Silent Hill. Oh man. Sorry, I was looking at games down. I forgot about that. Anyway, so when Paul Ryan brought up the idea of going through all spending, including all the entitlements, that was when the narrative began, and that was when attack ads began running on television about how the Republicans are not interested in maintaining your Social Security or Medicare, and they're going to throw grandma off the cliff if you don't vote Democrat. It was a pretty good So anyway, it was during that time period where they decided we have to latch on to something that's going on here. We'll just say that Paul Ryan is going to take away, and the Republicans more specifically are going to take away the Social Security and Medicare from every American citizen. And Paul Ryan, he was a terrible speaker. He was not a good member of the House. He wasn't a good. He was a really bad representative. Period. He didn't really do much of interest, and it's just a complete and total dismissal of everything that we would be normally fighting for. That makes total sense. But the reason that now is coming back up and that the Democrats are out in force trying to push the scaremongering again is because of one main reason. Once again, going back to David Schweikert, he had this graph. It would have been great for Kamala Harris. It has Venn diagrams on it, but actually, oh wait, no, it doesn't. So she wouldn't like it. Yeah, never mind. It had a pie chart on it, so it's a little different. I don't think she likes those as much because she didn't really have the same sort of fervor of talking about those as Venn diagrams. Although knowing her, she might have gotten the two mixed up. I don't know. But anyway, so when you take a pie chart of all the tax receipts coming into the federal government, and then you separate all the income by the federal government into three categories. You have mandatory spending, what's that called specifically? It's military, but it's not just like average rank and file. It's actual property. Well, no, okay. I was gonna say, is there any? Yeah, there's gotta be. So anyway, the Trump plan when he came in, he's looking at this, but the way that David Schweikert presented it was on the pie chart. Now, here's the way our tax dollars get split up. The pie chart's separated by the largest part. Well, the largest part at about 72% of the tax receipts that come in go to, drum roll, entitlements, aka Medicare, Medicaid, food stamps, welfare, et cetera, et cetera. Obamacare, things like that. they all go to that's 70. It's around 72-73% of all the income tax collected around the country. Just goes to that. So there's that aspect. Number one. And number two, I'll admit, yeah, I might have parted off with a little bit more, but the thing was is that I got so as I said before, I got some money back from my dad's house where we were living for quite a while because we didn't know for sure how long what kind of events would be going on. And it's not like it's not like it should be rocket science to figure this out because right now we're dealing with a population of not only people that are able to live longer than people were able to live, a century ago. Whereas now it's much more common to find someone who fits in that category, but at the same time, the problem is that what do you do with all that entitlement spending? Well, there's some things that you can do, and I'll go into this next, I swear. But the bigger, more long-lasting sorts of problem is caused by that. Then when you go to another part of the chart, which is non-discretionary military spending. Now, this is one of the scariest parts, especially considering the state of the foreign policy right now. Which, at the bare minimum, at least we can keep hope for the time being, especially because if there was a situation where war would be kind of something that looks like it's going to be on the horizon, right now there's not one chance that we're ever going to find who is going to completely agree with anybody's opinion on taxes. Anyway, some guy was talking about this like this. I want to talk about and then someone's like, taxes? Like, yeah, tax. How do you forget that he was there to talk about taxes? I have no idea. But anyway, so to go to military non-discretionary spending, and obviously that's one that is going to a important function because governments need to attempt to keep their constituents safe. That makes sense. But well, yeah, it doesn't really matter one way or another. It's sort of set up. It's sort of set up. So anyway, so what does that leave the rest of the budget, which is like around let's see, it's 73, 75. It's 80, about 87. So that's about 13% of all tax receipts can be done then with discretionary spending, or what you would call like spending that isn't an immediate presence and an immediate threat to anyone and everyone that will listen. Anyway, because they don't anyway, yeah. So the amount for tax receipts for non-military discretionary spending, which means that this is money that Congress has to either not spend or to spend if they think there's a cause that is important and needs to be needs to be specially addressed in a budget or whatever, because this sort of area is a place where there is a lot of financial issues, and there needs to be some sort of solutions for it. Well, it turns out that just throwing money at areas that are war torn and that are weary from constant conflict and that have some sort of serious condition that makes them just absolutely crazy with yeah, the so that's how much they have. They have whatever's left over after the 73%, and then the around 12% for the mix of headphone amp and what I'm using right now, which is a really interesting, if not very helpful little gadget, which kind of surprised about that, but at the same time not so much. But well, either way, so you're looking at about 10% at the best, maybe a little bit more than that, maybe getting close to 12 to 14, or even up to 15, which I know you don't want to hurt anybody's feelings or anything, but you guys are really screwing up your job here. This is insane. But yeah, it's just like, who is... Okay, so I'm sorry. Keeping track of this tax situation is hard because I'm not good at math. I'm not good with numbers. I'm trying to remember these numbers on the fly. I didn't plan for the. I should have written down at least a couple of keynotes, but I do remember everything. I'm just trying to remember how everything fit together. So here was the ultimate plan, and here's where things are really fucked up between the Democrats and the Republicans, what they're trying to do, why they're trying to do it. And while I agree with the right that the spending is mostly driven under ridiculous, I guess we're still wearing masks everywhere for certain situations. Oh, man. Still wearing Davis. Yeah, that'll work all right. But anyway, so I love it when someone gets arrested for a traffic stop and they're like, "Can I see your ID registration?" Yep, yeah. Go in there from box today and trying to find the registration form. Now, it's my personal car right now is operating as a non-operable because I'm trying to finish fixing it up. But you have tax insurance. You have or tax for your vehicle. You have tax for your income. You have tax for your home. You have renter's tax and renter's insurance if you have rent from a duplex, especially, but even from certain apartments or condos, you still have to pay some type of rent for. Not rent, I'm sorry. I keep saying rent. Taxes for. And it's not easy to keep a good beat on, but the problem is that there's so much money to be made that we have to make sure that our project. Can you just try it again from here? I guess not. Okay. Yeah, I don't even think. Oh, yeah. How did you read this? This thing is faded off as hell. But anyway, so to basically encapsulate the situation, you have over 70% easily going to social. You could call it humanitarian. You could call it you could cause it. That's right. I was taking. What? So anyway, sorry, I'm sorry, I'm bouncing around all over the place. But let me get back to the actual subject. The 70-something% that goes to Medicare, Medicaid, and social welfare programs. The 12% or so that goes to military non-discretionary spending. So that, and by the way, that is that's something that is really a travesty, also, because as we've been learning lately, over at least the Biden administration, the military was operating in a way that their main priority wasn't exactly teaching people how to be disciplined, prepared, and be ready to step in on behalf of someone's child to save their life. There was no other real understandable reason why someone would be that in favor of taxes at that high a rate, unless they're trying to punish people. And that seems to be the more motivation of the left, is that this isn't about helping the American people out. This is about picking and choosing which sort of high-level figures, because there's a reason for this, of course, mind you, sort of high-level figures with a big fancy title and maybe a pretty large-sized bus, or whatever it might be. But really, either way, it's just anyway, so when it comes down to all the discretionary spending that's left, everything that they can decide that's not on autopilot, that's not set aside already for all the things we talked about, you're talking about around 8 to 10% of the budget that comes in from tax receipts across the United States, and that is going to cause, as far as debt to be removed, to be Today, after today's session, I think I'm going to have to download the newest version of OBS. I might have an older version. That might be what's wrong. But anyway, so the last part about the tax part, before we move into the real bigger problem, is that, once again, if you mention at all about wanting to scrutinize the budget, wanting to scrutinize where we spend all of our money at all, and we want to just look, not about anything changing, just look at how we're spending our tax dollars, they immediately could take that clip, use it in an ad, and immediately accuse Trump's administration and congressional Republicans of, once again, wanting to throw Granny off a cliff. That's their go-to example. That's the biggest financial argument they have against anybody they're talking to. And I can tell you right now that I did have some sort of respect for what's her name, Brooke something or other. Jeez, I can't remember what it was. But yeah, no, Brooke, whatever her name is. Oh, geez. Okay. Basically, the problem is that when you can't look at the way everything's spent, you end up with very little you can decide on. Now, there's also one other sinister aspect to this, though, and that is that, like, take a look at military spending, for example. Now, you expect that to be getting our military in fighting form, buying the best kinds of weapons technology that can be purchased on any dealer or whatever, and
it just doesn't work to save anything for anybody. And see, I don't know. If you're trying to leave, it's not going to work. But okay, here we go. So anyway, that's the problem with the tax code. Now, Republicans have gone back and said we want to review taxes. We want to review everything coming in. Now, starting from the premise that okay, we take in more money. What's that going to do? Well, we know for a fact that just simply taking in more money isn't going to solve the problem. This is where we're going to get into today's first big topic. But getting into the idea of just collecting more tax money is not going to have any kind of effect on immigration, but there is somebody who's having an effect on. I'll have to play that clip tomorrow. There was another really good clip I'll have to show because Douglas Murray is on MSNBC, and he basically ends up roasting this guy for a minute, and just barely under a minute, and it's it's smart, but it's not the most. Just the feeling, the vibe, and everything else that goes on with it is really tear us apart again. That's why that song in Joy Division, not to mention the other aspects of the show, is kind of coming to mind today because people are willing to tear each other apart right now because of the tax problem. And once again, it's not just that we are doing that. Here's the problem. You look at everything going to Medi-Cal, Medicare, Social Security, food stamps, entitlements of any kind, and you say, okay, well, that needs to stay in place. That needs to not go anywhere. Okay, that's true. But why is it that high? Well, it's that high because of... Okay, it's that high because they seem to be purposely trying to keep technologies that are available but might lower costs or might make things more convenient for people or might be good for long-term benefits of the country. They don't want to invest any kind of money into the development of further preventative measures or I won't say vaccines because it's partly vaccines, although that's something that's been a blemish on a lot of industries for a while. But yeah, so there's too much stuff that you could do and nobody wants to look at, but they're more concerned with winning their own next re-election strategy than they are with coming up with something that would really be beneficial to, like, apparently this is something interesting. I had no idea about this, but type 1 diabetes is apparently something that we're on the verge of pretty much being able to successfully treat to a level of what we would call cured, I guess. And type 2 is quickly becoming something we are seeing the ability to not just treat anymore, but something that we can use to actually prevent people from getting the virus in the first place. And it won't do any good just dismissing that out of hand for no reason other than some contrived reason, like saying once again that we don't want elflings around here, we don't want halflings around here, we want to live in peace. No, you don't. You want to live in squalor. It's the only time I've invited you over to this village, but the buildings, SSJ, I'm sorry, S8L, I know it looks pretty intimidating, doesn't But yeah, no, it's just such a sad situation of, once again, we could do great things, but somebody says never to do one to help me out, and I'm not sure. I know I have a pretty distinct art style, and the only thing that sucks, which is, it looks like I'll be a stocking stuffer as well, because it's not the controllers. The controllers seem to work fine when they're hardwired in, so there doesn't seem to be any problem with that. But yeah, it's messed up. So I'm here for. Hold on just a second. Let me. Yeah. So okay, here we go. Now I can finish up this. Good. So then you have the military spending. Once again, similar situation. What's going on with the military spending? Well, you think of the military spending to going to recruit, like I said, young men and women that are prepared to take up a cause and fight for the country and do whatever they need to do in highly, like the most high pressure, intense, mind jarring events that we've ever seen before, I think. And let's see. Well, either way, it doesn't matter. The point is that, when it comes to that part of the budget, we found out that there's been mandatory training for new recruits about how to use people's preferred pronoun. We've learned that one military policy was designed to designated to be something where people needed to go. They needed to go there. There's no goodbye. So see you later. It's they're catching on to the game. They just don't know how to really do anything that would be beneficial. And moving on. But yeah, I don't think anybody really knows 100% why all the tax money is going to where it's going for. And once again, with the medical money, if you are saying it just to get a bunch of kids in who you're going to try to diagnose with puberty blockers and with cross-sex hormones and getting them buttered up and prepared for gender transition surgery at the age of goddamn 16 or 17, for fuck's sake, then I would say that that's a government not doing its job. That has nothing at all to do with. I'm not an expert exactly in the Japanese constitution, but I would be. I wouldn't be so. But yeah, there's a double standard here where it's like, yeah, okay, this is for military. Yeah, you can spend it on all these social programs so that you can teach our military to be more inclusive and use inclusive language and use this and use that. I'm sorry, the military I thought was for a specific role, like, oh, I don't know, protecting the homeland from dangerous situations, to help protect any allied faction in the Orisha that kind of go missing. Here we go. Yeah, it's yeah, it's all right. So just to illustrate, just to kind of go over, I know I'm sorry, I'm trying to illustrate the picture and then kind of give a thought, and I'm doing it slowly, but there's an ultimate place where I'm going here. Um, so we know what's going on there. What about the small percentage of non-mandatory? Well, here's the last problem with that. The Democrats have consistently been putting out bills when they were in the majority, in particular, that it was really, really, really bad. The most infamous of which is Nancy Pelosi's Obamacare bill that she actually went out in front of a press conference, and when asked about what was in the bill, and did she think that the House Republicans were going to go along with it, the answer was essentially, well, you're going to have to pass the bill to find out what's in it. That is not only completely corrupt in the way that you handle business, but it's also so unethical that I would say that someone like that doesn't deserve to call themselves So there's so anyway, I'm sorry. Back to the last final point. There's a big problem with the way that all of this is handled and all of it is set up, because the last bit is getting put into pet projects in the budget, and like I said, you have to read the bill to know what's in it. Well, when you have bills that are 1,500 pages or 2,000, sometimes 3,000 pages long, and most of it has to do with the actual spending of the budget, but there's all these. If you're unfamiliar with earmarks in the terms of a bill for the Senate or a taxing bill, the idea of what did I just say? Jeez, what's that turtle thing doing over here? There we go. Yeah, so yeah, there you kind of have the idea of what could become of both, you and Bernardo, because of this whole situation. By the way, if you're unfamiliar, Paul Bernardo and I forget the name of the broad that did it. They were serial killers in Canada. Very, very despicable guy too. He I won't get into it. It's pretty disturbing, but and we got enough disturbing stuff to go into. But ultimately, the Democrats are really trying their best to shame the Republicans into going along with almost every bill that they come out with, despite how beneficial it is. And then the earmarks are always marked here, there. And just to give you some examples of some earmarks that I've heard of in Congress, there's earmarks for, basically libraries or parks or buildings or areas of a city that are named after a certain politician that's living, that's in Congress right now, but they think they should have their own building in an area. And hey, they can spend the money too for this, because if something happens to be in the way that's also an old predicated mansion, hey, go ahead and destroy that too. Are you serious? Oh yeah, but I guess. See, he says they're not letting me out. Yeah, they probably noticed us talking, but yeah, no. So just the idea that Democrats want to balance the budget is just absolutely ridiculous. And to top it all off, here's why I got so mad. Some people in my family that rely on Social Security are actually literally day-to-day concerned that their Social Security money is just going to disappear. Now, we're nowhere near that being close to reality in any way, shape, or form. but because of the masterful deception of oh geez so anyway, yeah, that's where they want to spend the money. Now, Republicans obviously have a very different agenda, but the thing is that they want to cut back on spending. But that's when you run into these problems where it's misrepresented in Congress. The line is completely misrepresented by Congress. And it's not even for anything that would be beneficial. It's in many cases the Daesh attack is seen as yeah, no, it doesn't really say there either. The point is though that everything's going to junk. Everything's going to junk, and God, I dropped it again. I where the hell did it go? Ah, there we go. Landed on the seat. That's how it. So, and Democrats want to get mad at Republicans. Well, that's why Doge is so critical right now, because I think that President Trump kind of recognizes this aspect, because the House Republicans were never going to be able to go along with this. They were never going to be. They're never going to grow a spine to be able to actually. At least a majority. There's tons of them that are very outspoken about. Thomas Massey's a great example. Chip Roy's a great example. Scott Perry's a great example. All these guys are really great fiscal conservatives. But the problem is that when the attack ads start to run, some of the ones that are a little bit weaker get very nervous about their races in their home states, and they start to cave. That's something that we, the people, can never allow, because it's just absolutely ridiculous that that's something that we have to be afraid of. That's never something that we should be afraid of, because it's absolutely ridiculous. But once again, they got people in my own family convinced that one day they're going to look and their Social Security money is going to be gone. And I'm here to tell you, no, it's not. Because even though, I mean, Caroline Leavitt was annoyed as hell when she was in the press office trying to dissuade the ridiculous reporters from places like CNN and MSNBC and Huffington Post that no, the president's been clear. And as I'll make clear again today, he's making sure that everybody knows I've been asked this question over and over and over again, and no one's giving me an answer. Why? Well, because they don't necessarily want you to know. And this is the last line of defense, I think, between people commonly understanding what would be in a rift zone. God, I love to see it this way, but so yeah. But anyway, that's just thank you. That's just the wide-eyed sort of loony bin with the kind of mindset that would push this sort of thing without really considering the overall consequences. Now, here's where things start to get a little bit more. We'll go ahead and get into things more interesting. So Doge is finding out all this stuff about government agencies, and once again, money that comes into the federal government that has to fund federal departments and all the agencies, all the bureaucrats, all of the people who are permanent in Washington, what people would refer to as deep state, the people that are unelected, nameless and faceless, but are hired into a job that likely has classified or top secret level of classification pushed on it, and it's just a little like sad little individuals that has no idea what it is that they're basically advocating for here is they want to see conservative speakers be able to like be shut down. They don't want anybody to be able to counter the narrative, and unfortunately the narrative is all wrong because as we're discovering with the two agencies that that Elon and his team have been going into so far, the things that have been the laundry list of things that have been spent on by our tax dollars is just, it's infuriating. And so for them to turn around and say, well, we have to keep funding these government projects, we have to keep funding it, and at the same time saying, well, no, it's critical that the people that work for USAID and people that work for the teachers union was going to be next. It seemed like when I left a comment about this, somebody misunderstood what I was saying because this crazy broad who is about, by the way, Linda McMahon, the candidate that is up for confirmation for Donald Trump's Secretary of Education, or whatever the title, I can't remember the title of that. I don't think it's Secretary of Education. I think it's, it might be. Either way, obviously it has to do with the public education and teachers unions and directly related to the public schools around the country. Now, this lady's talking about how it's terrible for Elon to fire so many good, hardworking teachers and blah, blah, blah. Okay, first of all, I can say for a good, hardworking teacher, that's definitely true. But as a blanket statement, that's ridiculous because even today, there are teachers that either are trying to fight for or they're lamenting the fact that they have to go back to school to teach the children when, well, we could just do remote learning and everyone would be safer. No one would catch any diseases like COVID. It's like, you fucking bitch. You still don't get it. Or you do. You just love the time off so much. And that was the other thing with every business that's been deep dived into by Elon and his team at Doge. A huge amount of their workforce does not show up to work. And they haven't shown up to work since the lockdown was announced. And since, if you were to do that with any other job now, there's no way that you would be like, that you would be the supreme sort of individual leading just sort of leading this sort of charge to have our schools funded, make sure that our kids get a good education. First of all, we spend more money than any country in the world. These stats have come out quite a few times recently. We spend way more money per student on our public schools, and we're ranked in the bottom 20 at least. It might be even lower than that, but we're ranked incredibly low despite spending more than any other country per student. And that also has to do with the fact that not only the teachers not able to be reasoned with or are all very good at what they do, but the idea of tenure, especially in certain cases, kind of ruined the idea of teachers being rewarded just like any other profession. When you're rewarded, when you do good, you're rewarded. When you're bad at your job, you're demoted, you're penalized, or you're fired. One or the other. There's some sort of like, what's the word? I can't even think. Accountability. There's some sort of accountability that is put on display and demonstrated so that it shows everybody else that you don't do what we ask you to do. There's going to be consequences for it. But when you had the head of the teachers union, Randy Weingarten, who is not concerned at all with that and is more concerned about money for the union than the quality of the union's work, well, then you end up with a very unfortunately corrupt union that doesn't help anybody, that doesn't benefit the schools that they're teaching at, and you have now a situation where the literacy rates have dropped to ridiculously low levels. The math level rates are down even worse. Which, by the way, I'm not the best at math. I suck at math. I just got in touch with a friend not too long ago, which, by the way, I mentioned this not too long ago, too. Somebody that I knew that lived in Southern California that I was worried about because of the fires, and I told her I had to call her. Turns out she's just A-okay. And as a matter of fact, she's more than A-okay. She moved away to, I think, Michigan. So, she's doing great. Lucky for her. And she actually did some teaching for a while, but, as opposed to somebody who I would imagine, in her case, I could definitely see her wanting to be hands-on with actual students. Some teachers were using the excuse of the pandemic to ride the wave of, remote learning, which is not helping students at all. And I just heard this story not too long ago about a kid who developed a lisp because of the fact that he couldn't see his teacher's mouth moving because of the mask on her face during every session of class, and it was like he couldn't pick up on the language very well. He was struggling, and because of not being able to, people don't realize this about children, that their ability to watch and imitate is very much part of their learning process. And so when you don't allow them to see the pronunciation of a word, and it's not like when you see someone trying to explain something to somebody and they use every syllable as they enunciate every syllable to the point that it's like overblown and it's obvious that they're trying to kind of be condescending about it. It doesn't have to be that extreme, but there is a level of that where for especially younger kids, that is almost necessary. And because that was something that was denied to this young kid for so long, he had to go to a speech therapist afterwards because of the lisp that he developed. He wasn't born with it. It wasn't something he had ever had a problem with. They only had a problem with it when they had remote learning for all this time. Now Doge is going in and trying to find ways to identify where spending is going awry, or where it's going to places that don't really deserve it, and to take it away from there and then give it to a place that does deserve it. And they're finding out a smorgasbord of stuff that's like just absolutely ridiculous that we would be spending any money on it. But the Democrats are furious, and it has nothing to do with anything about what we're spending or what it's being spent on, or even if it's a good idea or not. The only reason they don't like it is because it's Trump that sent Elon to find it. It has nothing to do with anything else. Because these are things that, for the most part, aside from maybe the transgender ideology bullshit, which they'd be behind regardless, but because of most of it, it's because it's Trump and Elon that found it, and not because of anything else, and ideologically speaking. But now let's finally get to these some of these clips. So this is from a House session that was not too long after Doge was first getting through excuse me, the NSAI or USAID going through their spending. And I've talked about that already. I've talked about what the money was going for. So you have a pretty good idea going in, but it gets brought up a little bit again in this case. This is more about the practicality of how is it that Democrats are still defending this when we can look at it and we can say for a fact that this is not something that we want our money to be going towards. This is ridiculous. We should have some say over where our tax money goes. And unfortunately, Democrats don't really seem to agree with that. But they're also well aware of the fact that we're in debt. But this is where things seem very strange, because it doesn't seem to be registering, or something even more sinister. They don't really mind if America is so ridiculously and completely overwhelmed with debt that we end up either, going into decline as a nation because of the amount of debt that we have and the amount of money that we owe, or they're so ignorant that they don't understand that you can't just print money and have no global consequence for it. You can't just keep handing people free money without making up for it somehow. And then when bills come out that try to address the spending by cutting from here in order to pay for this, they're not in favor of it, because they want to spend the money, and it's on these stupid, ridiculous, nonsensical projects that don't benefit anybody. So, this is I can't remember the committee, but this is Mark Green. He was a former chairman of the subcommittee on immigration, and he is now sitting on this particular committee. It's chaired by Brian Mast, who's another real hawk when it comes to the government's overreach. But I've never seen Mark Green go off this hardcore. Like, he's furious in this clip. I've seen him one time this pissed, and I could understand because it was at Alejandro Mayorkas. But in this particular case, it wasn't because of Mayorkas. It was because of the Democrats just refusing to acknowledge that maybe having someone go in and look at the spending that is taking place based on the American taxpayers' money, maybe it's a good thing that we see where it's going at this point. Maybe it's a good thing that we see where the money that people are entrusting the government with, maybe this is actually long fucking overdue, and people should have done this a long time ago. Because the fact that it is this bad, and that we've allowed the government to be able to make these kinds of decisions, and we're talking about foreign aid, we're talking about spending in foreign countries for things that don't have any benefit to the United States whatsoever. Unless you think that, it's going to be great to have a, world standard of being able to all gather around the idol of tolerance and inclusivity, or whatever the hell I think is going to happen. And everyone will be trans, including Islamic people, and which is actually insane. But anyway, let me get to this clip real quick, and then we'll talk about, because there's several. Once again, I rambled on about that subject for so long that I hope I can get to everything. I'll kind of try to speed through a couple of the other things, but and maybe we'll just end up going really long today. I mean, I haven't done an episode in so long, but I just realized I don't even have the right folder open. No wonder. Okay, here we go. Let's try this one more time. It should be in. Well, it's definitely in the sidebar because it's one of my frequent folders. So, yep, here we go. Okay, and yep, here we go. All right. So yeah, let me 2 seconds. Let's get this up and running. Yeah, that's off. Okay. Okay. All right. Let me All right. I can't remember what date this is. It was probably about a week ago, or maybe a week and a half ago. This is going over the spending. A lot of people had a lot of good things to say in this hearing, but this one by far was the best senator to chime in on this one, because Mark Green's pretty well respected, and he's never in any controversial situations. He's a pretty no nonsense kind of guy, and he's not he's not like a neocon. He's not a old school Republican who's always wanted to go to war. He's not. He's completely non-controversial from what I've seen. He's definitely an old law enforcement kind of guy, so he's a little bit more sympathetic to police officers. But that's about the only thing I can think of that about him that is really particularly descriptive. Otherwise, he's your pretty average Republican that sits on committee. But this time, I was really surprised to see him as angry and wound up as he is. But considering the subject, I'm not all that surprised, because he's right to be that upset. So anyway, let's go ahead and check this out. Oh, wait. Yeah, there we go. Okay. Oh, volume's down. There we go.
$5.5 million for promoting LGBT acceptance in Uganda. That is not life-saving, and that's not combating Ebola. Gentleman from Tennessee, Mr. Green, is now recognized.
Thank you, Chairman Mass, and I appreciate your leadership, and I look forward to working alongside you to bring needed reform to our diplomatic strategy. We certainly have a lot of work to do, and this hearing is just the beginning. Accountability is coming. Thank you also to our witnesses today. The corruption going on behind USAID's doors has been a wake-up call for all Americans. As chairman of the House Homeland Security Committee, I spent the last 2 years exposing the Biden administration's sabotage of our border and the policies that kept America safe. I saw firsthand their willful refusal to protect this country. Under the guise of foreign aid, USAID has been an unapologetic front for a far-left agenda. It has become self-evident there weren't a handful of foolish policies, but rather a coordinated strategy of radical, idiotic, and often anti-American priorities. Idiotic, you say? Millions to teach Moroccans how to make pottery?
Ooh,
the Moroccans were making pottery before we were a country. This entire debate today and the crocodile tears from Democrats just goes to show what's wrong with this town. Not a single Democrat I've heard has expressed dismay at the many examples of crazy, wasteful spending. I don't understand the objection to a deep dive in how we spend our money. But perhaps it's the fact that over the last several weeks, a massive surge has occurred in the search for a criminal defense attorney. That probably says it all. 5 times in this city, any other city in the nation. I'd like to remind the committee that President Kennedy unilaterally created USAID through an executive order in 1961. Yet the President Trump, orders a momentary pause after winning a mandate for reform, and Democrats cry, constitutional crisis. This is after 4 years of reckless spending and unrepentant lawlessness from the Biden administration. I want the American people to understand how this works in Washington. As long as you're spending other people's money, no one bats an eye. But the second you want to save taxpayer dollars, the swamp cries wolf, or in this case, unprecedented constitutional crisis. This breathless, fake outrage from the left is utterly insane. And you know what the American people, you know they can see right through it. The generosity of Americans and the blessing of giving aid to others has always been one of our most valuable tools for diplomacy. The American people have a proud history of championing aid to our fellow man, but lawless bureaucrats have poisoned that goodwill. Many USAID programs are wasteful and actively sabotage our diplomatic relationships by forcing woke ideology on our partners. Just look at PEPFAR, a beacon of hope in the fight against HIV/AIDS, yet the Biden administration even weaponized this crucial program, jeopardizing lives and undermining our relationship with African nations. Under Administrator Powers, our message to Africa was explicit, as it was heinous. Abort your babies and violate your religious convictions, or we won't grant you life-saving aid. Let me be crystal clear to those who've been complicit in this betrayal. Firing those involved is just a start. We have a long way to go. And one last point. I want to correct the record on a couple of things. First, Elon Musk and the team that is working does not have access to personal data. They don't have access to your Social Security number. That is a lie. Elon Musk does have a security clearance. He has a top secret security clearance. By God, he makes the rockets for NASA. But the suggestion that he somehow can't be trusted to dig into how we're spending our money is nothing but a smokescreen to hide the corruption and the wasteful spending that has occurred there. And I am personally offended at the left's continued references to 19-year-olds and 21-year-olds in there doing work. There are 19-year-olds who have won the Medal of Honor defending this country. Just because you're 19 doesn't mean you're some child who can't be trusted. It is offensive. And if you're 19 years old out there, 20 years old, and you're serving this country, by God, your service matters. Keep serving. We thank you for that. It would appear that I'm out of time, Mr. Chairman. I yield.
You know, it was interesting. I heard somebody else talking about that too, and they were talking about how Steve Jobs and Bill Gates and there's a couple others they mentioned. Some of the best entrepreneurial minds in the history of this country, they were 19, 20, 21 when they started their companies. Mark Green's mentioning some of the patriotic Americans who fought in different wars that were 18, 19, 20, 21. And there's been countless examples of that throughout history. But, you know, as we've come into this new age, the age for people who are kind of expected to be the ones in bigger positions or doing bigger things has kind of shifted to an older generation. And that there's nothing particularly wrong with that, but not acknowledging that there's still going to be people that are going to be younger who are overachievers or who are brilliant-minded or who are just naturally gifted at certain things. It's ridiculous, and it's absolutely, completely offensive to the idea that, they keep bringing, like he said, they keep bringing up this attention like it means something to say that these kids barely out of high school are going through all these government agencies. Yeah, because it looks like people that were in high school were the ones that were in charge of the agencies. Sorry, it's not exactly like these are some sacred hollowed halls that have to be, screened for the people that are looking through it. No, this is ridiculous, stupid spit, which, by the way, once again, as he was talking about there with Africa, that was one that was really particularly sick because this had to do with fighting some of the particular Iranian-funded Islamic terrorist organizations that were near the regions. And there was, I think it was even Uganda was part of the, they were one of the African nations that was brought up in the discussions that, we were going to fund them with some extra funding to help keep an eye out for some. I can't remember what the deal was, but basically there was funding that was offered and everything was fine until they had passed a law that banned homosexual marriage and banned abortion beyond the term, a certain term or whatever. And all of a sudden the administration's like, oh, okay, well, no, we're not giving you the money anymore. And I just sat there and go, wait a minute, hold on. We'll give money to Gaza, places that murder innocent children and teach kids in elementary school how to make suicide vests to blow up Israelis. We'll give tons of, foreign aid to that country. But if you pass laws because you're a nation that has some sort of religious value, which, by the way, don't get started on religious values if you're going to give money to a hardcore incredibly Islamic extreme Islamic extremist country under Sharia law, and that's fine. But you're gonna take a Christian nation that is not going to wed gay people and not going to allow abortion after a certain term, and you're going to take their funding away. You're going to punish them for it because they're doing something you don't like. Like the whole, I've got nothing. Once again, I shouldn't even have to say this, but I'm pro gay marriage. I'm pro. I'm not even. I hate the position I'm in on this one because I'm not really even pro life or pro choice. I'm kind of. I'm definitely not pro life. I'm definitely not pro choice anymore though. Because pro-choice means pretty much just about anything anymore. And the stories that have been used to defend it are absolutely ridiculous. Like the one of the girl that was killed because she was forced to keep a pregnancy. No, that wasn't what happened. She was taking an over-the-counter abortion medication, and she was taking it in the wrong dosage, and she ended up bleeding and was not called to try to get an appointment, and it only got worse and worse, and it intensified. And on her way to the hospital, she started bleeding out to the point that when she got to the hospital, she passed out and bled out and was dead. It had nothing to do with bearing the child. It actually had to do with the abortion medication she was taking, which is the irony in that one, is that it was actually the unsafe part was she was taking the wrong kind of abortion. She was taking an abortion medication in the wrong dosage or at the wrong amount or something. And for me, I've said this several times, like I think there should be a cutoff point, and I think that cutoff point for me, from what I've seen, and this seems to be kind of the point for a lot of Americans, by the way, is about 12 weeks to sometimes a little bit more than that, 12 weeks to maybe 14 or 15 weeks. I say 12 weeks is the important cutoff point. Why? Mainly because if you're talking about normal fetal development, which, I mean, yes, there's always cases that are abnormal, that are faster, that are slower, that are whatever. But normal fetal development seems to kind of place the average at when a human child is developed enough to have a nervous system that is capable of feeling pain, that is capable of reacting to stimulus, that has all of their basic human features like fingers, toes, ears, nose, fingernails are starting to develop even. At 12 weeks, that's about that point, and as that'll includes the nervous system being developed enough to feel pain. That is when, for me, it's most important to say no, not after that. That's beyond question, because of one main reason more than anything else. Because at that point, you are actually inflicting a incredibly torturous murder on a child, and a child that is developed enough to where you can pretty much say that, yeah, this child's developed enough to where this child will be most likely, unless there's some really insane complication, or you're a completely, absolutely terrible parent and you start doing things to your body that you shouldn't be doing, like taking wild drugs or fucking some shit like that. There's no way that child couldn't be delivered alive if that's the development process so far. Now, there's all kinds of variables where there could be exceptions there, but I think any fair-minded person would agree that when we look at individual cases, if there are anomalies or unusual circumstances that are beyond the scope of normal scientific understanding, then there will be maybe discussions that ensue to decide what to do with it, what to do with the situation. Maybe parents will still want to try and keep the child. There's been people that have been told their child isn't going to live more than a few weeks because of the condition that they have, and they're like, I don't care, I want to have my child anyway. And it turns out that that child ends up living an entire life. So this new worship of science as if it's a new religion, that's my biggest problem. Science is becoming worse than most religions in the world because the people who talk about it don't understand what science is. Science is an ever evolving, always questioning, always making new discoveries, and never settling on. So the idea of settled science is like an oxymoron. There is no such thing as settled science. Even gravity itself is something that people find out new things about every once in a while. I mean, there's nothing that is settled about any scientific field. That's the point of science. You're always questioning and rehypothesizing and testing conclusions again and again and again. You can't ever have settled science. So when people go up on leftist news companies to tell you about settled science, remember, hear that term. It's probably a term that means these people are pushing an agenda, because science itself doesn't tell you anything. Science itself is not an entity or a being or a mindset or a sort of anything independent of man. Mankind performs science and scientific endeavors to try and understand the world, but science itself is not anything more than a process, or anything more than a way of conducting a set of processes in order to reach a conclusion about the world around us, or about ourselves, or about even metaphysical topics. I got really into quantum mechanics for a long time, and I started learning basic ideas of quantum physics, especially when it comes down to the atomic level. And when you start getting down to questions at the atomic level, and you try to expand those concepts to the level of even humans, or things that are the same size as human beings and things that we can perceive, it's wild. It's wild as hell to think, because just think about this aspect. Like a cell, or a let's say a molecule, or a like a, let me see, something that makes up matter, like a hydrogen particle. Now, bear in mind, the human body is made up of hydrogen, about 80% hydrogen. Now, hydrogen is technically water, but at the atomic level, it's oxygen. We all know the H2O, hydrogen 2, oxygen 1, and that revolves around a nucleus, which it's like there's electrons, protons, and neutrons, and electrons. Now, when you have a particle that has the correct what's the word for it? The periodic table elements that are rotating around in a almost looks like a galaxy, or a solar system almost, where there's the nucleus in the center, and then there's two or three or one particles that are rotating around the nucleus. That space is literally, when you look at it, that space it looks like it's mostly empty, right? It's got the nucleus in the center, and then there's the sort of different elements that are rotating around the center. Well, if you were to expand that and blow that up to something that would be visible, like to the size of something that could be seen by the naked eye, it would be so large that it'd be about the size of a house or something. It would still be small, but it would be about the size of a house, small in relative terms. It'd still be about the size of a house. You'd have to be standing above it, and even then you'd be hard. I don't even know if that would be visible, because of the fact you have to be so far away, but maybe you could see the particles at that point. But my point is that that particle is made up of mostly, when you look at it zoomed out, there's mostly hollow space there that's not taken up by anything. And yet that is how the particles that exist are made up, that make up every bit of matter on Earth. And yet they're mostly hollow. How does that work? That's what I mean by questions about how the hell does this stuff work? How does it work on a subatomic level to the level of that perceivable by human beings? I don't know. That is weird as hell, and it's crazy to think about, and you mind fuck yourself to death thinking about it. But once again, it's settled science, so I guess we all know the answers, right? No, we don't know all the answers. That's my point. My point is just that everything that they call settled science is things that you'd have to really deeply probe into the answers for, to be able to figure out what they say. So it's nice that you will try to be some kind of public servant that actually believes in the scientific method and testing in a hypothesis, and come out and use scientific data to help explain things to people. But using a term like settled science, or using terms that are using the field of science to try and help the public by getting them to go along with some kind of idea that you have, that who knows how authentic or realistic it is, and then putting it up against the reality of what's actually happening. Like, for example, no, the virus didn't originate from China. No, of course not. It originated in a bat cave. These kinds of things are so ridiculous, and yet people hear a term like the science is pretty clear on this. Okay, well, I guess that's true then. That's not what science is. That's not how you reach conclusions, and that's certainly not how you keep a population informed as to honest, true, and clear examples of realistic, honest information. Like, it's just a way to manipulate the masses into believing that you're correct because you invoke the word science. And if there's one thing that I would say, make sure you don't do, it's make sure you don't ever fall for some freaking liar who's going to get on and reference science over and over again. It's just become such a ridiculously overused way of trying to discuss things with people. Science has said this is clear. Science hasn't said shit is clear. Science has told us enough about things to give us a good idea of the way the world works. But it's the same reason why we don't allow polygraph tests in court, because there's no way to fully 100% say with any degree of certainty beyond the scientific test that it's true. And there's a ridiculously high level of certainty behind a polygraph test. And yet, because once again, it's not something you can point to and say, yep, there's definitive evidence of this being the case, then it's not something that's admissible. It's like, it might as well be palm reading at that point. It's like, and I'm getting way off on subjects right now, but I had to get this out because it's annoying as hell hearing about what settled science has to say about these things. And it's really, really become a pet peeve of mine to hear people invoke science constantly, especially people on the left who are invoking science to tell us that men can be women and women can be men. It's like, okay, yeah, that's really settled science there. I'm glad you're here to tell me that science has told us these things, because I never would have believed that if you hadn't told me that science told us. Yeah, man. And there's idiots out there who actually think that, we can go ahead and use science to explain things like that to everybody, and they'll just believe it. Like,
what business is it of yours to require that I fulfill your inability to think of gender on a spectrum?
That, in fact, is the woke prophet Neil deGrasse Tyson, who has gone off the rails lately with his ridiculous transgender discussions. And he just sounds... the guy used to sound like this really interesting, intelligent guy. He used to talk about things that were kind of mundane, and he'd make them interesting. Like thinking in a different dimension of, like people used to discuss, well, how can we have a system of traffic where it's not as easy to constantly get congested if there's only, we can only expand the highways so far. And he said, well, there's actually a pretty easy solution to that. Think instead of 2 dimensions, think of the third. And they're thinking, oh, you mean like flying cars? He's like, no, I'm not talking about flying cars. I'm talking about bridges or tunnels. And they're like, oh, yeah, of course. It's like it was an interesting way to frame discussions that people were, those kinds of things, they should be obvious, and yet they're not quite as obvious as they should be in certain situations, because you kind of are like, man, these are problems that are so complex. How do we fix this? And you notice how someone's mind immediately goes to the most extreme example rather than the more obvious, the more practical by a massive amount, yet the not as obvious to the thinking mind when you put it in scientific terms. Because when you hear something explained in scientific terms, it makes you think in those same kinds of grandiose ideas of expanding your ideas and expanding new concepts into like this way of thinking that is totally different. And yet that's not true. It usually is something pretty simple. Now there are exceptions, of course, but once again, like it's just a simple matter of allowing people with the knowledge and experience to kind of come to the conclusions and show you the reasoning why. But here's the key difference. Things like this, where they don't want to show you, where they don't want to explore, they don't want to look into these things, are the things that should be the signs to people that these people have totally bad faith, and they are not at all telling they have no interest in telling you the truth. They have no interest in helping you get to the truth, and they certainly don't want you to know the truth, because if they did, they would be just as... Let me put it this way. I've seen the Democrat Party contest every single fact-finding question that has come up since Biden got elected. If the Democrat Party was interested in squashing people's concerns about the 2020 election, they would have been saying to Trump, yeah, okay, let's all open up the voter registries in a public way to make sure we show everyone exactly what the vote looks like. And then there wouldn't have been any question about it. If they were interested in, assuaging people's ideas about how the money was being spent at USAID or on teachers in the country at public education level, or at the Pentagon, which is probably coming up soon, they would say, sure, yeah, let's open the books and show the public exactly what we find. But they always frame it in one of two ways. They frame it as either, number one, and this one's ridiculous, but not quite as ridiculous as the second. Number one, it's for our safety. It's for our safety and the safety of all the people around the world, that this doesn't become public information that can be taken by our enemies and used. Okay, first of all, we're talking about how we spend our tax dollars. We're not maybe defense spending when it comes to the specifics of how you build a certain type of weapon. Yeah, okay, I get that. Or how you use a certain type of detection technology, radar technology, certain technologies that are used to find things. Okay, yeah, I get that. When you're talking about basic funding, though, like, just tell me where it went. There's nothing dangerous about that to show the public where you're spending the money. That's ridiculous. It's absolutely insane that would be used as an answer. But it's even worse. You want to know what's even worse? When they try to say that Elon Musk is trying to stop the people's will from being done by taking our tax dollars away from these agencies. Wait a minute. First of all, who said we wanted our tax dollars going to this bullshit in the first place? Are you kidding me? Chuck Schumer's out there screaming at the top of his lungs about how dare Elon Musk spend our tax dollars. First of all, they're not our tax dollars. They have nothing to do with you, you sick piece of shit. They have to do with the American people's taxes. You in your cushy government job where you make a shit ton of money for doing nothing but shooting down ideas that would actually help the country, you're not a part of this discussion. and you shouldn't be inserting yourself in this discussion. And Maxine Waters, the absolute freaking most destructive person in the entire body, is sitting out there once again. I mean, you want to talk about inciting riots and inciting mobs and inciting violence. You could put her at the top of the list of people that are trying to do that. You notice how after George Floyd or during the Derek Chauvin trial or now during this whole thing, all she's done is point at people and point at things that that are going along with Trump's agenda that she doesn't like, and trying to expose their name and trying to expose who they are and trying to expose, what they're doing, and trying to say that they're destroying our public safety systems, and they're going to make sure that she is an absolute unhinged, out of control loose cannon that is trying to destabilize this country and trying to create social unrest and social chaos. It's despicable, it's disgusting, and she has no business whatsoever being in elected office. And whoever keeps putting her there needs to seriously take a hard look at what they're doing with this, because she is the kind of person that would lead us into a goddamn civil war if she had her way. In fact, we'd already be there probably if she had her way. And it drives me crazy, though, when people like that sit there and say that they're using our money to spy. Like, first of all, also on top of this, like, you want to talk about spying on Americans or using Americans' information against them. How about you, Chucky Boy, and the FBI and the Democrat Party and all the attempts to undermine President Trump and talk about how, he's in league with the Russians. The Hunter Biden laptop is Russian disinformation. Joe Biden didn't fire a prosecutor because his son worked at Burisma. Is because the prosecutor wasn't actually going after crime and actually prosecuting Burisma. Oh, okay, so you mean Burisma really should have been investigated, but it wasn't, so Joe Biden fired the guy that wasn't going after Burisma because it wasn't doing it, even though his son sat on the... Are you fucking kidding me? Like, what is this shit? It is all such a ridiculous set of lies that when you think about them for 10 seconds, a little bit more than they want you to, then it makes no sense. And yet people go along with it because they're like, yeah, that makes sense, yeah. And Dan Goldman is the same thing. He used the same kind of stupid bullshit when he was talking to the FBI whistleblowers about why the prosecutor, or I think it was with Matt Taibbi and Michael Schellenberger, when they're talking about once again about the Hunter Biden laptop, and that it was because Burisma was not being looked into by this prosecutor, and this prosecutor was found to be corrupt and not doing his job, and so Joe Biden was doing the right thing by withholding. Okay, first of all, that's taxpayer money. He doesn't get to unilaterally decide, and he says in that speech, he says, even the president says that I can withhold the tax money. First of all, I find that hard to believe that Obama left him in charge of deciding whether or not to give the Ukrainians the money that he had promised. But even looking beyond that, let's say that he did. If you and Obama both were in league with this idea that you're going to get there with taxpayer money that we are, for some reason, giving to the Ukrainians, despite, I don't remember you ever asking the American people anything at all about wanting to send money to Ukraine, yet you just know for, it's for the greater good, of course, so, whatever. I guess that's the way it's going to go. But now you're saying, no, we're not going to do that. What are you doing with our tax money? Why are you playing these games with our tax money? It's not a bet that you can place on red or black. It's money that the American people entrust to you by force of law enforcement, but still are forced to give you to ensure that our will is being done, not just locally, but on the global stage, like to make sure that our best interests are looked out for. But when it's done in a way where you're going to hold it hostage until they do what you want them to do, sorry, you're abusing the money that has been given to you by we the people. And that is an absolute overreach of government. That administration was corrupt to the teeth, and for people to still be there and still criticize Trump as if he's this horrible dictatorial figure when you had scumbags like that who have shown that they couldn't be trusted to be in charge of a goddamn Ace Hardware store, let alone the United States government. It's absolutely just, it's infuriating. It's absolutely infuriating, and I could go on and on and on with example after example, but I'll just leave it there with that part and move on to one other subject, because after that I need a little bit of a laugh and some fun news. So we'll go over that and we'll end the show, because man, today went longer than I thought. But I had a lot to say today. So anyway, so let's get on to the fun subject today. You guys have probably heard already, but I'm going to rehash it because it deserves to be rehashed. So it's obvious to everybody, including them at the time and today and before, and it's been increasingly obvious as of late, that stations like MSNBC are not doing too well. So badly, in fact, that they're starting to lay off and fire a bunch of people. And one person that couldn't have been a better choice for letting go was none other than Joy Reid. And that's where our title for the episode today comes. You see, Joy Reid has been doing this, whatever you call it. I call it segregationist programming. I guess you'd call it a television show. The Readout, where because she can talk about white people however she wants, has been saying some of the most racist things I've ever heard on television for years now. I mean, we're talking about an out-and-out racist here. But because it's to white people, then it's totally fine. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not complaining. That stuff doesn't bother me. I talked about this not too long ago about how my hair color was the thing that people most made fun of when I was growing up. And it's kind of funny because at this age now, and with my mindset now, I wouldn't change my hair color at all if I was offered to change. I like my hair color too much. I don't want to change it. But that was just the thing that was made fun of the most. I'm not. It reminds me of a song by Minor Threat. I think I mentioned it before, called "Guilty of Being White." And it's a really good song. But there's never been a more appropriate time for a song like this, because there basically is a group of people out there that believe that if you're white, you're automatically guilty of something. And it's by virtue of the fact that, they've convinced themselves of something like systemic racism or white privilege or, all these things that they've come up with. And really it boils down to nothing more than an excuse as to why they need to be given more, which is really because, there's tons of black people out there that don't agree with this sort of thing, that think it is actually diminishing to black people. And it's true. And as we've come to a point now where the Supreme Court has ruled that it is unconstitutional to give black people or any racial minority or any racial group a some sort of advantage by giving them higher favorability in hiring or acceptance or anything like that to schools or workplace or whatever. And it's become clear that at this point that even after having all those things in place, and even after this ridiculous concept of DEI, which believe me, I'll unload on that one of these days. Right now, I'll just say that you can't get mad at somebody except for yourselves if someone is not feeling completely safe when they see a black pilot. Because guess what? You know what made it the case that was happening? You did. You made that the case by saying that, well, you know what? There aren't enough black pilots. And people might not feel safe if the pilot they have doesn't look like them. Sorry? I couldn't give a shit less what the hell my pilot looks like as long as he flies the damn plane correctly. What is this? When this idea of representation became so important to people, it was when really things started to go off the rails. And I don't understand why it was so obvious that it was a prevalent aspect of human experience that looking for people that look like you is super important. That was never something for me that like seemed like, okay, there's the idea of fitting the look, but that's more about the clothing, the hairdo, the way you carry yourself, the way that you present yourself, the kinds of the way you speak, the way that it has nothing to do with your skin color or the way that you look. It has to do with certain aspects of your character. And so, like, the idea that you're going to narrow that down into something just as simple as skin color, first of all, that does a huge disservice to everybody, including black people, because once again, I've heard this from college students, I've heard this from people in the military, and now you're hearing this from people in the avionics industry, that it's depressing to hear people concerned that because I'm black, they are concerned about the job I'm going to do. And that is unfortunate, but a lot of these people understand that no, it's not because of people's concerns being irrational. They're totally rational. They're rational because they know that there was likely somebody who was qualified to be in this position, and rather than take that person who is more than qualified to be in this position, they took somebody else because of no other reason, not having to do with their competence, their skill, their amount of time they've been in the field, how many flight hours they have, how many of anything relevant to the job. It has to do with nothing else but the skin color, and that's it. That is something that takes the idea of equality and throws it out the window. That's not equality. There's nothing equal about that. In fact, that's the exact opposite of equality. That is actually making things unequal. But as Kamala Harris said, some people start from a place that's not as far ahead. So in order to, okay, bullshit. You don't have to do anything for those people, because guess what? Everybody has their own story, their own sob story. Everybody has their own story of how difficult it was for their family growing up, or them growing up, or how they were set back, or how, everybody has situations that throw things off course, that derail your plans, that set you back, that ruin everything you had planned. But you know what you do? You stand up, you suck it up, and you get back on track the best you can. You might have to change plans entirely. You might have to do something totally different. But to have the federal government step in and say, this isn't fair, now we're going to push you ahead and put you back where you were. I'm sorry, no, that does not work. That does not work, because that's cheating on the test. That's cheating on your performance exam. That's cheating on everything that would be cheating on your evaluation. Anything that is a measure of your qualification or your ability to do the job is completely and totally thrown in the grinder because of the fact that you want equal outcomes. It has nothing to do with the process that would be used in meritocracy. So it's totally understandable why people would be a little bit concerned about those things, but that's why it's sad for actual African American people and black people, because look, they shouldn't have to wonder their entire lives if they actually deserved the job they got. They shouldn't have to wonder in their old age, did I really deserve that position, or was it just given to me? I saw a college student, I think I told the story before, I saw a college student who was being interviewed who was asked, don't you think it would have been better if you didn't have to question whether or not you deserve to go to this school? If you had known that you made it in because you worked hard and because you were accepted based on only your work ethic and only your ability, as opposed to having to question. Because it was this girl who basically seemed like she did very well on the SATs. She had great GPA. She was someone who seemed like an incredibly hard worker. She had a ton of books on her. She was, your typical kind of student that looks like, she's always going somewhere. She's always going to something else. She's always involved in something. And she seemed very insecure about the fact that she belonged there. And it was sad as hell to see that, because she shouldn't be insecure about that. She should take pride in the fact that she's been able to do that. And yet, because of the practices that go on, because of affirmative action, because of DEI, and because of hiring practices that look for black people over any other ethnicity, never mind how unfair it is to Asian people. Oh, God. If you're an Asian woman, you have more cause to complain than just about anybody else. And yet, listen to what they're doing. Nothing. They're not doing anything. I heard something this morning from Miss Joy Reid about how they reported on the unfair treatment towards African Americans. I'm sure they did, but they probably didn't tell you who was doing the unfair treatment. Because guess what? In almost every case, it was black people. And you know why? They were pissed off about COVID. That was mainly the reason why. From everything they had gathered from police reports and from statements by witnesses and from statements from perpetrators, this was retaliation against Asians. They didn't really distinguish between Chinese American and any other Asian American group. That this was for COVID. There's one guy who had his head slammed against the garage door so hard he killed him. And that was just another sad story that went by, and we hardly think about it now, but I think about that every once in a while, and I'm reminded that, man, it's insane people able to do it. Now, what they did instead, especially Miss Reed, was they played a bunch of clips of white people in cars flipping off some Asian American people, and maybe yelling racial slurs at a few Asian American people. That was pretty bad. You know what was worse is the black people who were walking up and blindsiding Asian people. There was a lady walking into an apartment building, and this black guy walks up behind her and smacks her in the back of the head so hard she goes straight down. And then he kicks her again while she's on the ground and then walks out. Just walks away. So he does his civil duty on the way home of beating the shit out of some poor Asian lady and leaving her on the floor with her ass kicked because, I don't know. I'm sure she didn't show that one. I'm sure she also didn't show the video of, the things that are allowed to be the norm in this country because of number one, white guilt, and number two, this narrative of oppressor oppressed is just despicable, and it's disgusting, and I'm so sickened by it, but it's so absolutely just it's gross. But once again, I doubt she showed this. She most certainly didn't show the older Asian lady who was assaulted at a train station by this black guy who had to jump over the railing to get to her, hit her in the back of the head, grabs her, and while she's on the ground, pretty much helpless, she's just kind of flailing, trying to get away from him, but she can't. He tosses her down the stairs, and then when he realizes she landed on the landing and didn't go all the way down, he goes down to the landing, grabs her, and throws her down the rest of the way. And then he walks away. I'm sure she didn't show that one either. Why? Because she's a fucking piece of shit. That's why. I'm sorry that people who are black are doing things that aren't very nice. But guess what? Stirring up a bunch of bullshit against white people that they're all racist and evil, while black people have decided let's beat the shit out of Asian people because of COVID, is the most ridiculous load of bullshit you could possibly do. And you want to talk about divisive? I want to talk about what's divisive to the country. That might have something to do with it, Joy Reid. It might have something to do with your ridiculous agenda of anti-white. You can call it whatever you want, but we all know what it is. It's anti-white propaganda, period. It has nothing to do with empowering black people. It has to do with tearing down white people because you hate white people. It's like, once again, something Adam Carolla alluded to when he's talking about people who, instead of seeing success, instead of seeing someone with success, and I'm not even talking about white people being successful, I'm just saying this general idea that someone is at fault because I'm suffering. They would, instead of seeing someone with success and saying to your children or saying to someone you're with or saying to someone who you think needs to be inspired, look, that guy worked hard his whole life. He made a lot of money over many, many years, and now look, he's able to buy a nice car, he's got a great house, he's got a great family. Aspire to be like that guy. That guy has his shit together. Instead, no, it's like, man, that guy doesn't deserve that. Let's go throw a rock through his car. Now, that's the new perspective. That's the new way of thinking. And it, first of all, it gains nothing. It helps no one. It devolves the entirety of humanity down to the lowest common denominator, and it starts problems far worse than anything that anybody's experiencing right now, because it starts conflicts with people that have nothing to do with your failures, has nothing to do with anything that you're experiencing that's negative. It only has an effect of causing further tensions between peoples who are already at high tension, and you want to send it over the edge and make it a full-on conflict between peoples who wouldn't be having any conflict if you hadn't stuck your damn nose into business that you know nothing about, that you're not talking about honestly, that you're talking to push an agenda. Because I don't know if it makes you ratings or if it is bettering to your career or if you actually believe the horse shit that you're saying. But one way or another, it doesn't help anybody. And so, and just to finalize the last thing, it with the Asian people, as like the last thing I remember was in New York, they were giving out tasers and different types of non-lethal defense equipment to Asian people. There was a line probably 10 blocks long to get into this place and get something because of how in danger people from the Asian community felt in New York City. This was several years ago now, but I remember seeing the line and the guy filming it, and it's like it went on and on and on and on. It just was going on forever, and it was crazy. But that's how scared Asian Americans were. And if you don't, I'm sorry, I thought this was a nation made up of immigrants. I guess not an Asian you want made up of Asian Americans, because if they're Asian, oh God, we're going to beat the shit out of them because some corrupt Chinese lab under funding from Dr. Anthony Fauci as well decided to fuck around with coronaviruses and make one that was so dangerous, and yet it escaped from a lab because they weren't treating the lab with the proper types of safety precautions that they would if they were, making some kind of super virus that would actually be highly infectious to humans. It's just, that's the manipulation game that they play. So, anyway, in honor of Joy Reid's wonderful show, I'm going to show you some choice clips from the show, and we'll go ahead and end the show with this, because this is just to show you, what was on our show, and thank the Lord above that we are now rid of at least this one, because the nation doesn't need any more of shows like this. It really doesn't. We don't need any more shows that are here to divide people, to anger people, to make people be turned against each other, when our government was at least before Donald Trump came in and unleashed Doge, is working so hard to undermine the American people, and had been doing so up until finally there was some accountability that was brought there. We had to deal with bullshit like this. So let's play this clip, because hopefully for not much longer, at least as long as we're celebrating Miss Reid's departure from cable news, which, by the way, I saw this very emotional video earlier where she teared up, and I almost did as well, crying that she left her job. I was crying that it took her that long to leave it, but that she left nonetheless. But she's crying because her show had value. Her show, it did, I'm sure. It had some great value, especially to people trying to destroy the country. It had a ton of value. But, to people that actually have a brain and want the country to succeed in any way, shape, or form, it doesn't really have much value. In fact, it has the opposite of value. It has real destructive abilities. And so anyway, here's the clip of some of Joy Reid's greatest hits. Did I edit this? Yeah, I did. Where did I put it, though? Let's see if I can find it. I'm sorry. I know I have it somewhere. I edited it last night. I'll have to go back to... Okay. Okay, it's got to be somewhere else. Damn it, come on. I know it's here somewhere. I have things kind of scattered around at the moment. I haven't had a chance to actually really, what's the word? Organize everything in a while. But nevertheless, I know it's here somewhere. So let's see. Huh. Hmm. Gosh, everything always starts out. I don't know why every folder opens up without with small image thumbnails. I need them bigger. I can't see anything. Oops. Hmm. Hmm. Okay, hold on. I know I can find it. I know I can find it. Let me see this real quick. This one is the one that I used to. Yeah, this is the one I used to make the clip yesterday. Oh, it might be in videos. Let's see. Is it here? Okay, seriously, I might have to open up the program to see where it went, but this is annoying. Oh, maybe. Oh, yeah, here. I put it in the wrong folder. Okay, there we go. I thought it might be there, but here we go. Okay. Getting nervous there for a second, but I think I got it now. So, okay. Let's get this queued up, and we'll get to. Okay. Now we can. Oh wait, is this the? Hold on, one last thing. I forgot about this. There may be two. Because well, I made one that was maybe going to be an intro clip, but it turned out nope, it's this one because I actually included. This isn't just about Joy Reid. There's a few other race hustlers that. There's still one left, of course, and that's of course the king of race hustlers, Al Sharpton. And he's still there as far as I know, but hopefully, I don't know. He's Mr. Litigious response, so. Who knows if they will ever actually be able to get rid of him? But for the most part, a lot. You may remember a particularly nasty broad named Tiffany Cross, who was also just as racist as Joy Reid, but not quite as long-standing or as well known. And she didn't end up staying there too long. But she's gone as well. She's been gone for a while, and now Joy Reid's following her. So. Anyway, that was the wrong video. This one is the right one, so let's try this one out instead. And I know this is definitely it because I named it something totally different. So, the hell is going on here? Oh, don't tell me it didn't queue. Oh no, it didn't render. Wait, hold on. How long is this one then? Hold on just a second. Let me see this. I'm sorry. This sucks. This better not be what I think it is. It is, isn't it? Wow. Can I open it in a different player? Oh, whoops. Hold on. Wait, hold on. How long is it? Oh, I know what happened. Son of a bitch. Okay, hold on. I can fix this. Hang on just a second. Let me this sucks, but this is too good. This is too important and or better yet, you know what I can do? I have a better idea. Now I won't be able to include Tiffany Cross's, but I'll be able to include Joy Reid's. So these, I was going to let you guys know, these clips came from my old pal that I've gotten a lot of clips from in the past, Black Conservative Perspective, because he was the first one that I saw that actually covered this show, and he was laughing his ass off. It was funny. But he's been talking about her forever. He was one of the guys that was annoyed as hell with what she did. But anyway, I got the clips from him, and I thought it wasn't worth wasting all the clips that were also about the other race hustlers on the network. So I was gonna make them 2 clips, but they're too short to make 2 clips out of, so I put them all into 1 clip. And I remember what happened now. The new Vegas is annoying as hell, and sometimes you grab the sub clip creation bar that is at the top of the screen, and it makes it so that you're only catching what's in the middle of that bracket. And I accidentally grabbed it, but I ended up trimming the clip so short that the bracket disappeared because it wasn't even that far along on the timeline anymore. So I figured, oh, it must have, maybe it reset it then, because I don't see it anywhere now. Okay, well, I'll just render it. And I thought it took a long time to render, but I guess it didn't render anything except for the less than a second worth of video that was in that little... I'm so tired of Vegas. It's terrible these days. If you have a choice, don't get it. The problem is I know people like DaVinci, but I'm just not a fan of DaVinci, and there's nothing else out that other than Adobe. And Adobe's way overpriced. I don't know where they get off charging the prices they do for all their stuff, especially considering that, well, buy our whole editing suite. It's only $200 a month. And nah, I'm good, thank you. And besides which, it's not worth it. And even just getting their video editor, I don't need anything that complex. I just need to be able to trim some clips, have a few transition effects. That's about it. I do all my more advanced editing on something else anyway. So, no, that's all right. Thank you very much. I need something a little bit more simple. But God, it annoys the hell out of me. I'm sorry. That's a whole nother tangent. But geez, Vegas used to be a decent alternative to Adobe. What's their main video editor? I can't even think of the damn thing now. But they used to be a viable alternative, and now they're, they might as well be ignored because they are so damn worthless that they really aren't able to give you much of anything. But anyway, okay, let me just make sure I have this. I'm gonna have to adjust this so it's in the right spot, and I know exactly when to cut it off so that I don't drag it on too long. But yeah, that's this is the only way it's gonna work. So, okay, this shouldn't be too bad, I think. Okay, that was about there. And let me see when this ends. It's not that long, so. The time is... Oh, wow, this isn't too bad. This is a little longer than I thought. Okay, cool. This should work fine. I forgot Joy Reid's section is pretty long. Oh, yeah, it's definitely pretty long. Okay. Yeah, this will be good. Okay. I can also make sure I know what the last clip is, too, so I know where to cut it off at. Oh, look at this. This stuff about COVID, too. It's just... Okay, yeah, the last one is the COVID clip. Okay, cool. And that's at what? Yeah. Okay, 6:48. Okay, all right. I think I pretty much have a handle on this. So... There we go. Okay. So from about 3 minutes almost to 6:48 or so. Yeah. Okay. All right. We'll go ahead and do it this way. I'm sorry about that, guys, but man, I'm not about to let you deny you the excitement of Joy Reid and her incredible, glorious content that used to be on her show, The Readout, and what a clever title, but no, it sucks. But anyway, so without further ado, you can join me with a short little goodbye segment to Miss Reid. May she find greener pastures on social media, where I'm sure she'll do as good as Don Lemon's doing right now, which is to say, not doing good at all. But let's take one look back at the glory days when Miss Reid was getting, 50,000 views a night, which is pretty pathetic. But it's, for her, I'm sure it's great. So anyway, let's go ahead and watch this happy horse shit.
Can drive out the brown people and the black and Asian people, or just sink them into the same apartheid they've created in Texas. And they will control enough electoral votes if they can.
They want white supremacy by ventriloquist effect. There's a black mouth moving.
The other one, Michael Eric Dyson, who may be just as big a scumbag as Joy Reid, who called Jordan Peterson a mean old white man or something. And Jordan Peterson called him out for it and he actually made a fool out of Michael Eric Dyson, because this guy is supposedly a preacher. He's probably the most ridiculously hateful, bigoted, and non anything to do like with Jesus type of preacher I've ever seen in my life. But let's listen to this fraud talk some more.
A white idea through the running on the runway of the tongue of a figure who justifies and legitimates the white supremacist practices.
Your thoughts?
Byron
Donalds, who walked out after Dixie was played in New York and has no shame there. They say he's going to be the governor of Florida now.
Yeah, every community has what I call their chickens for Colonel Sanders. Muslims had their halal chickens. The black community has their chickens. Byron Donalds is a grown-ass black man
that's
who
pretty
referred to
racist
Donald
to
Trump
talk
as
about
his daddy. And what I want to tell the Byron Donalds, and every community's got a Donald. I got a Cash Patel. We got a
might as well call him watermelon.
we got a Haley. We all got them, all right? What I want to say is this. They'll never love you. They'll never love you. No matter what you do, they'll never love you. You can
they
never
love Byron
wipe out
Donalds
that brown or black skin.
But, I feel like the important sort of data point, and Steve talks about it a lot, he's going to probably talk about it a little more tonight, is that these are white Christians. That this is a state that is overrepresented by white Christians that are going to participate in these caucuses, especially tonight. Earlier today, reached out to Robbie Jones from the Public Religion Research Institute, knowing that we were going to talk about Iowa. And this is a hyper-evangelical white state. And he said the following to me. Iowa is about 61% white Christian. The country as a whole is approximately 41% white Christian. And in Iowa, we're talking about evangelical white Christians. And he said the following. Because I asked him, what do they get out of supporting Donald Trump? Because he keeps losing, he keeps delivering losses and losses and losses. And he said the following.
Man, yeah, he lost.
They see
big
themselves
time,
as the rightful inheritors of this country. And Trump has promised to give it back to them. All the things that we think about electability, about, what are people gaming out, or none of that matters when you believe that God has given you this country, that it is yours,
matters when
and that
you
everyone
believe in
who
the
is not a
Constitution.
white conservative Christian is a fraudulent American, is a less real American, then you don't care about electability. You care about what God has given. But Republican voters don't vote that way. They don't vote based on economics or based on the benefits they're getting economically from the president.
I was talking earlier,
they're increasingly, from the Tea Party
2017
on,
tax
they're voting
cuts,
on race.
we didn't
they're
vote
voting
at
on
all
this
based
idea
on
of an
policy.
invasion of brown people over the border. The idea that they can't get whatever job they want. A black person got it, therefore drive all the blacks out of the colleges, get rid of DEI. That is what they're voting on. They're just voting specifically on racial animus at this stage. It isn't about economics.
No.
Returning white Christian men, but also white men and white adjacent men, black men, brown men who are white adjacent.
This is where I get lost as hell. This white adjacent shit, or this this white nationalist adjacent shit. All this adjacent shit. What is this adjacent shit? I don't understand what that means. It's adjacent. So it kind of supports racism. Is that what the claim is supposed to be or something? That's kind of supporting this, but doesn't fully support. That I'm sorry, that makes no sense. Either you're racist or you're not. Like Joy Reid, you're racist and I'm not. I mean, I don't judge people on their skin color. You clearly do. You talk about white people as a monolith. You talk about them as a group. I don't talk about black people all as the same group at all. I talk about individuals as such. So, you know, the only time I ever refer to them as a group or anybody as a group is when I'm doing it under the lens of what progressives decided has to be the way we discuss people. And so if that's what this adjacent shit is a way to make sure that it's easier to lump people together, welcome to the new revitalization of tribalism, everybody. Which is exactly what this has always been. But, you know, it's just basically coming right out and saying it in so many words. But I love how it constantly has to be, you know, reinforced with something because something didn't make any sense. This didn't make any sense that this would happen, so we got to reinforce it with this idea. Like greatest example, Uncle Tom's. Their favorite term for Clarence Thomas, who is one of the most successful people in the country. Not black people, one of the most successful people in the country. And probably one of the most admirable people in the country as well. But no, he's just influenced by his white wife. So yeah, that's why he's doing what he's doing. You know what? Fuck you. Fuck you. Go to hell. Sorry. Pissing me
in
off.
terms of trying to also be in that dominant position in society. And then you
That's
have
what it's all
women who
about
are
right
willing
there.
to
The
go along with
dominant-
that, right? There's
the
a certain number of
dominant
women who are
position.
also willing, the trad wife sort of thing. And so what you've seen on the...
No, absolutely. I'm sure the doctors are exhausted. And, you know, Jason, there is a term called necropolitics, which is essentially the politics of who gets to live and who gets to die.
Oh, this is almost...
And these states, what they have in common is that they have structures which say that black and brown lives matter less. And so all that matters is that the black and brown people get their behinds into the factory and make me my steaks, make me my stuff, get there and do my nails, work, get back to work now and do the things that I, the comfortable, affluent person, need. Isn't that what we're seeing? I mean, that's what it feels like to me. Necropolitics in states like Texas.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah, that's more about the fact that masks didn't do shit, and that we should have recognized that, 14 days to slow the spread should have been 14 days to slow the spread, not 2 years to slow the spread. And our economy went in the toilet because of that and a bunch of other decisions by this ridiculous last administration we had. And the stupid people that I was discussing earlier that are trust the science crowd, that were using all the buzzwords and all the propaganda talking points they needed to make sure that people were scared to death of coronavirus, just the way they're making them scared to death of losing their Social Security now. It's all lies. It's all propaganda. As I said before, it'd have Joseph Goebbels spinning in his grave if he knew what was going on here, because his propaganda didn't hold a candle to what these people are doing. But anyway, okay, I'm going to end it there before I get any more angry about this. God, it feels good to have a proper episode again today. Thank you so much for watching, everybody who was here today. I really appreciate it. Sorry if I got a little spicy on that one, but there was some stuff that needed to be said. And by God, I was going to say it today no matter what. So, anyway, thanks so much again for watching. I will hopefully see you tomorrow if I actually get the right schedule in by then. I've got a few things I've got to do today for sure. I've got a much better... as a matter of fact, I got a great new device, a green screen roller for my ceiling. I got to find some studs up there to make sure I can get it put in correctly. But anyway, sorry about that. But I will hopefully see you tomorrow. I should see you tomorrow, and I better see you tomorrow because, good Lord, I got to get out of this pattern that I've been in. Nevertheless, hopefully I'll see you tomorrow. In any case, thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you as soon as I see you, hopefully tomorrow. And thanks again. Have a great night. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you in the next one. Till then, peace.
I can't read it. There's no words on it.
Okay. Honey? Sure.
There's no words there. To play us out. What does that mean? To play us out. What is? I don't know what that means, to play us out.